Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. I have Lieutenant General Michael Flynn with me. He, as you probably know, is a combat veteran, and he has over 33 years of military experience in the United States Army. But he's also out with a new book because you probably remember he served as the Director of Defense Intelligence under President Obama and was National Security Advisor to President Trump. And then everything kind of hit the fan. So now he's telling a story with Pardon of Innocence, an inspiring story of faith and freedom. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, Tudor, and thanks very much for having me. We first of all, we really appreciate your tenacity and wanting to serve as governor, and hope that you don't give that up. I always remind people that Abraham Lincoln, he ran, I think, 7 races and lost all of them. And then the final race that he ran was president of the United States. Of course, he changed the course of U.S. history, probably world history too. So, you don't have it left in you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've actually been counseled that way several times, so that may be still in the cards for me. But right now, I want to talk about what you know about the deep state, because I think that's something, honestly, I'll tell you, that's something that I do worry about even in the state of Michigan. There's so much that happens behind the scenes with the I guess, for lack of a better term, the bureaucracy in the state of Michigan, but you got to see it on the national and international scale with the Russian dossier and all of that. So kind of break down for us, remind our viewers what happened and what you ended up exposing because of that.
Yeah, so there's so much to unpackage here. One of the things that I would first of all, the book is very timely. Pardon of Innocence. The book is very timely because of this latest revelation from the CIA that was basically an analytic judgment that came out of the CIA recently in the last couple of days, that actually there's things I list, state in the book that are actually stated almost verbatim in this CIA analytic judgment that John Radcliffe's released. And one of the things that we have learned, and I fought tooth and nail during my case, which was eventually dismissed by the Department of Justice, which most people think that I was convicted and I served prison time. None of that happened. But that just shows you the strength of the propaganda machine that the mainstream media has. But
I remember the free General Flynn memes and everything we did think that,
because the media had an effect. Alternative media like yourself and many, many others now didn't exist in the 2016 and 2017 timeframe the way they exist now. So what we have learned is that the CIA, under the likes of John Brennan, the FBI, under the likes of Jim Comey, they basically, and then of course Jim Clapper, who was the Director of National Intelligence, they all lied about an analysis that was done. And they did it for political purposes in order to destroy President Donald J. Trump and to undermine the presidency of the United States of America. So those are not like subtle things that I just said. Those are not, normal things that you would hear when we talk about political, hit jobs. So the narrative assassination against President Trump was very real, and it is still ongoing. I said the other day, Tudor, because this has to do with the way this, I lay this out in the book. I take people through sort of why, and my background, and particularly my family, and the fact that they took on, because when they took me on, they took on my family as well. And I come from a family of 9 brothers and sisters. So we decided at a certain point in time, enough is enough, and we're done with allowing them to defeat us. And we said we're going to fight back, and so we did. And I brought in a great lawyer by the name of Sidney Powell, who you might know or your audience might have heard of. She's terrific, and she came in, and between her and I, a couple of other people, not this big law firm that I had prior, who actually that law firm was working with Mueller investigation to undermine my case. That's the other part that we also exposed in the book, and we also exposed that in a documentary that I did. So,
well, and I think it's important to point out. I think it's important to point out that you had worked for the Obama administration, and they knew everything they needed to know about you, and then they turned on you and used you as a way to destroy Trump. It was like you were just disposable.
Well, so people need to be reminded that I was a registered Democrat and didn't really care about politics the whole time I was in the military. I never voted for president of the United States because I also looked at the president, and no matter who it was going to be my commander in chief, and I didn't want to say I voted for that guy or voted for that person. You know, I just wasn't like that. So, so I was a Democrat. Trump actually considered having me as his running mate in June, actually for a couple of months, but in June of 2016, it was myself, Newt Gingrich, Chris Christie, and Mike Pence, who were the final four for vice president of the United States. And Trump called me up, you know, a couple of nights, two nights before he went out to see Mike Pence, and he said, "Hey, I'm not gonna take you as my VP." He goes, on another time, maybe I would have run as a Democrat, but it's not going to work now. And I tell that story in the book in pretty good detail, the conversation that we had, and it was fun. It's a fun part of the times that I spent with Donald Trump. And then you know, then I stayed with him the whole time. And when I went into the White House as his national security advisor, I was a Democrat. So the Democratic machine looked at me as someone who turned against them. You know, I not only was a general, and we were in the midst of wars, right? So I would have been my time as national security advisor was cut short. But, you know, when you look at the backgrounds of national security advisors over the history of that position, going back to Henry Kissinger, there are probably maybe one other that has my background, and you know, having run one of the largest intel agencies in the world, having served at highest levels of our government, having served as an assistant director of national intelligence. So, I mean, I had a pretty extensive background, a lot of combat experience, 5 years of combat experience. So I lay all that out in the book, and I was also against the Obama administration's narrative of the defeating of Al Qaeda, which was a big deal, and also another part that I was against while I was a general, while I was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, I was against the Iranian nuclear, what was called JCPOA, right? The Iranian nuclear deal that Obama won. I was one of the lone voices in the room of all leadership saying, no, this is a bad idea.
Do you think that going against that had an effect on the way he treated you? Because it does seem like there is this intense aversion to going after Iran by this Democrat Party, this new Democrat Party. You've talked about being a Kennedy Democrat. This is not the Kennedy Democrats.
Yeah, this is not a Kennedy Democrats. They hated Kennedy so much that they killed him. And we now know that the CIA was.
They hate his nephew as well.
Yeah, and RFK and Bobby Kennedy now are on HHS. So yeah, no, the CIA is a completely out of control organization, and I have said that, John Radcliffe needs to do massive reform at the CIA, because that's kind of like what your audience always asks for, and all audiences do, and I know that because I talk to many people around this country and have been for years now. People want to know, what's next? What do we do? And I think Donald J. Trump, as the president of the United States, 47th president of the United States, has a massive opportunity to have severe reform, particularly within the United States intelligence community, not just to, eliminate the office of the DNI where Tulsi Gabbard is, and I'm a big fan of Tulsi, but also to reform, and I mean reform like not just move some lines and blocks around on a chart, but I mean raise RAZE studies, agencies and activities, and maybe even a department or two, and eliminate them. Do we get rid of the CIA completely? CIA was always an organization that was supposed to be an analytic organization, meaning to do good analysis on the intelligence that was collected around the world, not an operational arm to subvert countries and to subvert our own country, which is what they have done. And let me throw in USAID, because I put something out for people that want to follow me on X. I put something out this morning from a Breitbart news article about USAID. For the last 10 years, USAID is an arm of the CIA, always has been. We can't kid ourselves anymore. So the USAID has been working with the Wuhan labs in China for 10 years, providing them viruses. And where do those viruses come from? They come from labs inside of the United States of America, in some cases from colleges and universities, other cases from labs that the U.S. government owns. DIA just so happened to have one of those labs, and that's up at a place called Fort Detrick, Maryland. So these are things, a lot of these things are things that I'm familiar with. So a long time ago, somebody said, Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. That's exactly right. And that's a metaphor for knowing what is good and what is bad within the U.S. intelligence system. And so, you know, where am I today? People go, why aren't you in the administration? Well, you know, I'm actually up in New York City right now to do a couple of things, but we're working on corruption activities and helping on some of the investigative components that the government is involved in. You know, and it's sometimes it's better to be working from the outside in, because when you're inside, you're sort of stuck in the narrative of whatever the White House is doing, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at now. You know, back to I think for you and for your audience, because I think where we're at right now, and I know that people believe this. I mean, but they just don't totally understand it. We're in the middle of a Marxist revolution in the United States of America, and it really started with Barack Obama. You see it up in Michigan. I mean, oh my God! I mean,
But you're seeing it in New York, where you are right now.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And, you know, I know a lot of people here, and I've been up here a lot of times, and I know a lot of the doormen. You always get to know the doormen, and I know a lot of them, and they you know, and I also know a lot of the police officers up here, a lot of them. I just attended the funeral of my great friend Bernie Carrick, who was the commissioner of New York during 9/11. I was up here, you know, only a couple of weeks back for that, you know, tragic, sadly. But, you know, everybody, I mean, like one of the guys told me yesterday, he's a relatively young guy, he's probably 10 years younger than I am. He says, yeah, I'm leaving. He says, I'm leaving the city, I'm leaving the state. He goes, things are so bad right now. And he said that they are really afraid of this guy winning in New York City. And, but he said, but even right now, it's bad. So we're in the middle of this revolution, and it's very real. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's real.
But how, I want to ask you about this, because I do think that people hear this and they're afraid. They don't know how to fight back. You brought up Marxism, and I've talked about this. If you look at Mamdani's background and you look at how Marx got involved in this, it's similar. Marx was a middle upper class. He lived off of his parents' money. He was able to be a perpetual scholar. The only difference between the two is that Mark's father didn't approve of his teachings and his writings, whereas Mamdani's parents are all in. They brought him here, I believe, to do this. And his rhetoric is, as many millions of people were killed because of Karl Marx, his rhetoric already is way worse than how Marx started out.
Yeah, it's Marx, and then of course you have the rise of Lenin, the rise of Stalin, the rise of Trotsky. Trotsky, you know, is standing in right now, started the Communist Party of America back in the late, you know, like 1918, 1919, 1920 time frame. And here we are a little over 100 years later, and the infiltration of what I call fellow travelers of the Marxist ideology are in spades in our Congress, in our institutions of government. Certainly the executive branch, they're all over the judiciary. I mean, look what we're seeing, the real tragedy of the judiciary standing against constitutional issues where it has to, you know, everything's got to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, you know, generally turns over everything back to the Constitution, but they do it because they're trying to delay this president's ability to execute his agenda, you know. And so this Marxist infiltration principally by the Chinese have been at this for a long time, for 20, 25 years. And my concern now is that it looks like Prime Minister Xi is on the rocks. And I think that my guess is that he's on the rocks because the Politburo, this means a lot to your audience, it means a lot what I'm about to tell you, to our country. If they get rid of Xi, my thinking is that there is an element within China that wants to be far more aggressive. And they think that they have the upper hand right now against the United States of America.
Wow.
And despite all of the tariffs, right? I mean, China has so many, their military is huge. Their space-based platforms, their hypersonic weapon systems, their scale of their forces, of their military itself, where our military right now is really not ready. We just, we're coming off of 2 decades plus of fighting, guys in shower shoes and bathrobes, fighting terrorists in the sands of Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere around the world. We're not postured, nor are we ready to fight a big conventional war. And that's why I want Trump. I don't want Trump to send more weapons to Ukraine. I don't want him to send more stuff to the Middle East. I want him to shut these wars down. We have got to get out of that war in Europe.
So what is your opinion of what happened in Iran?
Yeah, well, I do think that Trump did absolutely set the Iranians' nuclear weapons program back decades. No doubt about it. I'm very familiar with those targets. I studied those targets while they were being constructed for many years. I mean, I was one of my other duties was the senior intelligence officer for U.S. Central Command, and Iran was our principal adversary when I was there. So we watched the construction of all the nuclear facilities all the way to the base of those mountains, to the places where they built them, to the kinds of stuff brought in, the materials, the engineering. So I know exactly what it takes. So did Trump when he decided to drop, as many of those, what we call the big bombs here.
But let me ask you, you were in intelligence. You just said you saw it. You were watching it years ago being built. At that time, you had to have known that this was not for civilian measures. This was not for power. This was not normal nuclear activities. This was for weapons.
Absolutely. And Barack Obama actually said it. Barack Obama actually put them on a path to have a nuclear bomb. Barack Obama, President of the United States of America, who is one of the most anti-American, most corrupt, probably the single most corrupt president we've ever had in our history. And that man is still around. He's still hanging around, Washington, D.C., undermining President Trump again. The one other point, and it's, for people that will listen to this, because this will get a lot of listenership. The deep state that existed while Trump was the 45th president was a stay-behind force that Barack Obama put in place. But then he went through 4 years of hell with Russiagate. Okay, so that deep state never was removed. Then you had the fake election in 2020, and you had Uncle Joe as the president for another 4 years. Well, what they did was they cemented in far more abusive and subversive elements of the deep state into the executive branch of the government. Actually, they made it bigger. And so Trump is now facing a much larger deep state apparatus and a much more aggressive deep state apparatus inside of the executive branch of the government, never mind other parts of the country's institutions, right? Education and such, corporate world. But so it's not better this time. It's much worse. And Trump has a bigger challenge because our debt is it's vastly worse than it was. The last administration allowed 20 million illegals into our country. I mean, so the problems are much more, they're monumental problems. And so Trump, he got his bill, right, which is good. I don't agree with everything in it, but he got it. So now we can kind of move certain things forward. But now what Trump is going to have to do, he needs to go on a tear against the deep state, against the government, the unelected bureaucrats, particularly in the U.S. intelligence community, specifically in the Central Intelligence Agency, because that's really where the heart of the deep state exists.
Do you think that's what we'll see with this new? I mean, they've just come out and said that the FBI is launching a criminal investigation into John Brennan, who was the CIA director, and James Comey, who was the FBI director. Do those investigations allow them to kind of dig deeply into those two agencies and start doing what you're talking about?
They have to. And so the fact that they opened up this investigation and now we know about it, there's a Joe Rogan interview that Cash Patel did about a month or so ago, not too long ago, and he kind of indicated that he sort of implied that there might be something going on. So they probably have enough evidence. And there's a great article out today or yesterday, and it really dives in deeply. It's, a well done investigative journalism now in this article. It dives deeply into the lies by Jim Comey, by John Brennan, and frankly by Jim Clapper to Congress. I mean, there's a flat out lies under oath, committing perjury. So there may be what we may not see is maybe the House Judiciary sent over contempt or basically perjury charges over to the Department of Justice under the last administration. And now that we have sort of the A team in place, they're taking that and they're looking at that to review it and conduct the investigation. As I've always said, the first guy they ought to bring is Jim Clapper. Jim Clapper knows he lied. He knows he lied, and he knows this whole, the whole. And I have it. I have this document right here. This is the report, the CIA report that came out, with me, and they know that they lied about this. And I would bring Jim Clapper in for questioning now, because I think Jim Clapper, if he felt pressure, he would give the goods up on these guys. He does not want to go to prison for the rest of his life.
Well, James Comey, I mean, he briefed Trump on the Steele dossier. From your perspective and the knowledge that you have, and you've gone through the investigation, and you were actually offered a pardon earlier, and you said, no, I want the truth to come out. So you had more documents come out, and it turns out they had this meeting, they call Trump in, they present the Steele dossier, knowing it's not true, knowing that Hillary Clinton is the one with the Russia advantage. How does James Comey, how does everybody in that room get away with this? And I know that the president is protected from executive protection, but everybody else, how did they get away with this? I mean, even Hillary Clinton, she was involved.
That's the $64,000 question that the American people, 100% want to have, whether you're left, right, indifferent. People in this country know that we have to have one rule of law for, that's fair for all. And so they should not be able to get away with this. And I think that's why what we're seeing is this new investigation that had now been, publicly stated. These guys all lied about the briefing that Comey gave to Trump. That was actually done, and I talk about this in the book in detail. That was done on the 6th of January of 2017. Well, the day before, on the 5th, and I actually set that entire briefing up, and I can go through all the people that were there, but, for time, I won't. But on the 5th of January, in the Oval Office with Barack Obama, with the same group of people that showed up to brief Trump the next day in New York City, they conspired during that meeting. I talk about this in the book as well. They conspired during that meeting to basically, number one, get yours truly, get Flynn out of the way, and then we can get Trump. Because if Flynn is not out of the way, if Flynn is not taken out, of the National Security Advisor position, then there would have never been a Mueller investigation, period. They knew that I was coming to because I was very public about it. I was coming into the National Security Advisor position to reform the U.S. intelligence community and to conduct some audits as well. That the CIA hasn't been doged yet. Other intel agencies haven't gone through the Doge effect. When they do, I want people to know that the U.S. intelligence community's budget is as much or more than the Department of Defense's budget. What the heck? So people don't understand.
It just seems like there was this major attack against Donald Trump. You're talking about weeks before he gets inaugurated. So they are going to him beforehand and saying, heads up, we're going to get you. This was not to share information. This was a warning. We will take you down. Why was this? Why Trump? Why didn't this happen with Bush or Bush before that or Reagan? Why was it so hard?
They're all compromised people. It really are. Trump is not a guy that owes allegiance to anybody. For 2016 campaign daily, and I saw him talking to big donors of the GOP And he'd go, I don't want your money. You go, I know you're here to check me out but I don't need your money for this race. I'm spending my own. He spent over $100 million of his own money. I mean, this man he could have gone on and, played, the Sears tournament, right? He's that good and got a great life. Like he's always said. And that's why we have to stand behind Trump, because he gave up everything and he's been brutally abused by it. Same here. I mean, I spent, almost 34 years of my life in service to this country. 5 of those years of my life in direct combat operations overseas where my life was at risk. And I could have gotten out and gone and gotten a couple of board jobs and had a great life, and worked on my lousy game of golf. But, I saw what was happening, and I clearly saw the interns of the Obama administration. And, there's a very famous picture of me, Jim Clapper, John Brennan, and Jim Comey testifying to Congress. Very famous picture. You can go look it up on the internet. Those 4 individuals. And during that testimony, I was the only one that told the truth. And when I told the truth, and this was really about the rise or fall of ISIS, I was the only one that did not stick to the narrative, the political narrative that the Obama administration wanted, because it was a lie. It was a total lie. It was fabricated. So Obama could look like, he's all that, right? And when I was asked under oath, because I'm under oath, when I was asked publicly, I said no. I said they're not. It's a rise. Actually, it's all over the world, and we're part of fomenting that. We, the United States of America, we're part of fomenting that because it helps at times organizations like the CIA undermine other countries, and that now what we're learning, from 2017 on, is we're learning that CIA has been working to undermine the United States of America. And that is in the light of John Brennan. And John Brennan is not, because he's not the director, Ratcliffe is. John Brennan is still in charge of the CIA. He's still in charge of big blocks of the CIA. That's why the CIA needs to go through a massive, massive reform.
Well, I absolutely agree. I appreciate what you're doing. I want to just say, as we go forward, when we're watching this midterm is going to be challenging. We're going to see if the Democrats get control, we're going to see the deep state go after him even more. You are continuing to work to fight the deep state. We appreciate that. Tell people what they're going to find when they read your book, where they can get the book, but what they're going to find to help them to also do what they can do on the ground here.
People can go to Amazon. It's in the top bestsellers right now on Amazon. In fact, I was told yesterday that they're having a tough time keeping it in stock, which is good. I mean, that's a nice thing. You don't make.
It's a good problem to have.
I've written 8 books. You don't make money off of books. This is not about making money. This is about getting the church exposed. So you can go to Amazon, Pardon of Innocence, or you can go to generalflynn.com, and I'll get you a signed copy. But what I tell people, Tudor, is that I use the phrase local action, national impact. Local action and impact. So it's just like you found in your run for governor. You need to have people at the grassroots level that they're working for you, that are going to, get out there and eat a lot of glitch donuts, make a lot of RC colas, and just work hard at the local level to get the right people, leaders in our country elected. And we have got to stop electing little hacks who have destroyed this country. And that's Republicans and Democrats. So we got to get leaders. We need to be looking for leaders. And so my call to arms, if you will, for this country is for more and more leaders to stand up and say, I'm going to run for office. And what we're doing, even if you don't have the money or wherewithal, and you don't win, maybe you don't win, but you run. What we're doing is we're telling those people that are in the political establishment that we're watching you, and we're not going to let you get away with this anymore. We cannot allow our country to be destroyed from within. Abraham Lincoln warned us. John Jay, one of our original founders, wrote about it in Federalist Paper number 2 and 3. Abraham Lincoln warned us when he was 28 years old in a beautiful speech called the Lyceum speech. People can go look it up, where he talked about the only way that we're in is from suicide.
And you've said the most dangerous threat is from within.
From within. So anyway, well, God bless you very much, and you keep running, keep fighting.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate everything you do. And what you just said is so valuable to our listeners. I've said to people, look at the swing states, because in the swing states, you have the radicals that are able to get a foothold, but you have the opportunity in a swing state to defeat them. So make sure you go to the swing states and you work hard for the candidate that is going to be the best leader you can have. And that's what you're saying. I appreciate what you're doing. I know you've been to Michigan. I know you've helped us out here. So General Flynn, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
God bless. See ya.
And thank you all for joining us on the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this episode and others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com, the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you check us out on Rumble or YouTube at Tudor Dixon. Join us next time. Have a blessed day.